I'd like to end by quoting from a book which reinforces a lot of what I'm telling you right now. German society had been revolutionized, and the features of it were isolation and atomization, indoctrination and diversion, and I think all of these come out in this piece that Milton Mayer came up with. Milton Mayer was an American journalist he was Jewish, but he was of German extraction. And he goes to Germany soon after the war to interview several everyday Germans about what their experience had been. And at one point, he speaks with a university instructor. And what that man says, I think, is terribly powerful. And so this comes from his book. You'll understand me when I say that my middle-high German was my life. It was all I cared about. I was a scholar, a specialist. Then, suddenly, I was plunged into all this new activity as the university was drawn into a new situation. Meetings, conferences, interviews, ceremonies, and above all, papers to be filled out, reports, bibliographies, lists, questionnaires. And on top of that were the demands of the community, the things which one had to do, was expected to participate in, that had not been there or had not been important before. It was all rigmarole, but it consumed one's energies, coming on top of the work one really wanted to do. You can see how easy it was then not to think about fundamental things. One had no time. To live in this process is absolutely not to be able to notice it. Please try to believe me. Unless one has a much greater degree of political awareness, acuity, than most of us ever were able to develop. Each step was so small, so inconsequential, so well explained or on occasion regretted, that unless one were detached from the whole process from the beginning, unless one understood what the whole thing was in principle, what all these little measures that no patriotic German could resent must someday lead to, one no more saw it developing from day to day than a farmer in his field sees the corn growing. One day, it's over his head. How is this to be avoided among ordinary men? I don't see, even now. Your little men, your Nazi friends, were not against National Socialism in principle. Men like me who were are the greater offenders, not because we knew better, that would be to say too much, but because we sensed better. Pastor Martin Niemöller spoke for the thousands and thousands of men like me when he spoke too modestly of himself, and said that when the Nazis attacked the communists, he was a little uneasy, but after all, he was not a communist, so he did nothing. And then they attacked the socialists, and he was a little uneasier, but still, he was not a socialist, and he did nothing. And then the schools, the press, the Jews, and so on, and he was always a little uneasier, but still, he did nothing. And then they attacked the church, and he was a churchman, and he did something, but it was too late. You see, one doesn't see exactly where or how to move. Believe me, this is true. Each act, each occasion is worse than the last, but only a little worse. You wait for the next and the next. You wait for the one great shocking occasion, thinking that others, when such a shock comes, will join with you in resisting somehow. You don't want to act or even talk alone. You don't want to go out of your way to make trouble. Why not? Well, you're not in the habit of doing it. And it's not just fear of standing alone that restrains you. It's also genuine uncertainty. Uncertainty is a very important factor, and instead of decreasing as time goes on, it grows. Outside in the streets in the general community, everyone is happy. One hears no protest, and certainly one sees none. In the university community, in your community, you feel private. You speak privately to your colleagues, some of whom feel just as you do. But what do they say? They say, it's not so bad. You're seeing things. You're an alarmist. And you are an alarmist. You're saying that this must lead to this, but how do you prove it? These are the beginnings, yes, but how do you know for sure when you don't know the end? And how do you know or even surmise the end? On the one hand, your enemies, the law, the regime, and the party, they intimidate you. On the other, your colleagues poo-poo you as pessimistic or neurotic. And so you're left with your close friends who are naturally people who've always thought as you have. But your friends are fewer now. Some have drifted off somewhere and submerged themselves in their work. You no longer see as many as you did at meetings and gatherings. Informal groups become smaller, attendance drops off in little organizations, and the organizations themselves wither away. Now in small gatherings of your friends, your oldest friends, you feel that you're talking to yourselves, that you're isolated from the reality of things, and this weakens your confidence. So you wait, and you wait. But the one great shocking occasion when tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands will join with you never comes. That's the difficulty. If the last and worst act of the whole regime had come immediately after the first and smallest, thousands, yes, millions would have been sufficiently shocked. If, let us say, the gassing of the Jews in 1943 had come immediately after the boycott of Jewish shops in 1933. But of course, that isn't the way it happens. In between come all the hundreds of little steps, some of them imperceptible, each of them preparing you not to be shocked for the next. Step C is not so much worse than step B, and if you didn't make a stand at step B, why should you at step C, and so on to step D? And one day, too late, your principles, if you were ever sensible of them, all rush in upon you. The burden of self-deception has grown too heavy, and some minor incident, in my case, my little boy, hardly more than a baby, saying, "Jew swine," collapses it all at once, and you see that everything has changed and changed completely under your nose. The world you live in, your nation, your people, is not the world that you were born in at all. The forms are all there, all untouched, all reassuring, the houses, the shops, the jobs, the meal times, the visits, the concerts, and the cinema, and the holidays. But the spirit, which you never notice because you made the lifelong mistake of identifying it with the forms, has changed. Now you live in a world of hate and fear, and the people who hate and fear do not even know it themselves. When everyone is transformed, no one is transformed. Thank you.